Hi everyone. I am really excited. I'm joined by a friend of the show,
An old friend.
an old friend, not acquaintance, buddy. I don't like that
Pal.
word.
Friend.
Nah.
Confidant.
Yeah, confidant. All round good egg. I know you want me to introduce you, right? Because normally I just say to my guests,
Yeah,
introduce
you're
yourself.
so good at introductions, so I thought
But
I'd leave it up to you.
I will. So we're joined this morning by the incredible powerhouse, the relentless force, the inspiration that is Emma Louise Palmer. Can I say your full name?
Middle named me.
Emma Louise Palmer. It's your email. I'm sorry. I'm giving a lot of GDPR issues here.
I'll be getting inundated left, right, and centre from randoms.
Random
I'm
HR
sure I
directors. Em is the obviously she's an ED and professional and cultural transformation specialist strategist, working currently with the National Trust and a range of inclusion projects that are hopefully helping to bring nature, heritage, and inclusion, kind of connecting all those kind of amazing threads together, which we will be talking about in today's episode. But we're here, Ems is obviously going to be here in her capacity as Ems first and foremost. So yeah, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Do you think we're growing up, Rainbows and Bullshit? We've leveled up, haven't we?
It's a stark contrast from my sofa, your phone.
New York.
That was cool.
I like New York.
I liked New York.
Yeah.
New York was... It felt raw.
Well, that's when the concept of the words came in. Remember, confidence and comfort zones.
Yes.
So we really ran with that over season 2.
And it's evolved into
and now we're in season
where
3.
you are today. I'm really proud of you, Wish, and your journey. It's just been so nice for me to be part of it and on it with you.
Thank you.
And just seeing you flourish.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's nice to be here today.
And I appreciate you, friend.
Friend, confidant.
I don't want to say advisor. That's weird.
Hi, I'm your advisor. I'm your mentor.
Mentor. You kind of are, though.
I think, friendships are so... I don't think they're one thing.
Yeah.
I've had mentorship through some of my friendships where I've needed that guidance, and I like to think that I pay that forward.
You do. You absolutely do. You live and breathe it, and I love that for you. And I love you, and I think it's such so just every time we have a conversation, it's always so powerful. It depends on what kind of conversation.
It is. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for being a friend of the show. Talk to me about connection. So let's start with that word. Why did you... We've been back and forth with themes, haven't we, really?
Yeah.
We've got to talk about. And I know something that's really coming out for you through a lot of that was connection.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I had to sort of think long and hard about the words that I chose for this. And it actually wasn't an easy thing to do. It sounds quite easy, doesn't it? Choose 3 words and talk about them.
Yeah.
But I wanted to steer a little bit away from just talking about the things that I talk about every day in my work in EDI, and I brought it back to where I'm at right now. And so connections just kept coming up for me because I've for this past year I've made some connections with people, I've lost some significant connections with people, and I was lucky enough recently to be invited to speak at an event as their keynote. And the brief was, can you talk to us about your time in the police and how that affected your mental health? Because the theme of the event was being LGBT and mental health.
Okay.
And I sat there and thought, I can do that. I can talk about that small window of my life, but there's a lot more to that story. And the theme of connections came up. Right. So I started to think about how can I weave in my life against the backdrop of some of the most significant cultural moments of the last 30 years. Yeah. Well, I'm 42, so 42 years. And that led me to going right back to 1982 when I was born, and then thinking about who was in my life at the time, who was around before I was born, who was my mum around, what made my mum the person that she was back then because of the connection she had, and how did that inform the way I was raised. So connections became quite significant for me. And yeah, it took me right back to 1982, and then I had to
tell us more about this, because one thing I wanted to, because I know this event. It was a really profound event for you, because I remember you rang me up and we FaceTimed actually about designing this event, and you were like, "This is the brief I've got. I've been asked to come and speak to this quite a significant brand,
yeah,
about, you know, with a large audience. Actually, it was quite a significant event.
it was huge.
And I know that it's had a really profound impact on you. I think you kind of almost going through that was much more than just going to an event. I think for you, you almost relived stuff.
I did.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, from starting off thinking, okay, they just want me to focus on my career in the police, which was 8 years, which is a long time, but there was so much more to my life. So I offered up the timeline of events and the journey, but not just talking about me. You know, the way I work, it's never about me. It's always about everybody else and what I'm there to do, or what I'm there to facilitate for everybody else. So I thought, how can I balance that idea of like being the sage on the stage?
I love this.
But also being the guide on the side.
I love this.
Which was a phrase that I was taught by a guy called Chris Armstrong, who runs a D&I consultancy in the US. And I loved it because I thought that is the spirit of what I do. So when they asked me to do this event, I thought, right, how can I weave in political and social moments from the 80s and the 90s? So I introduced the Brixton riots in 1981 and the impact that had on policing, but also the black community who were disproportionately affected and impacted by what was going on at the time. Section 28, right. The AIDS and HIV crisis, all these things were happening, but how did that connect to me? My godfather, Ian, he died of AIDS and HIV. And my mum tells me the story of Ian and how much of a beautiful man he was, and a letter that he wrote me before he passed away. Yeah. And there were all these things that were just so profound for me. But it took me back to some traumas in my life as well that I had to really think about and process and reconcile. I think there were quite a few things that I didn't deal with, I think, over my life. I've just sort of thought about them and that's it. But yeah, being able to go through that process, not only with myself, but with my mum, talking to my mum about, what was it like in the 80s, mum, when you were bringing me up? Like, what were you doing? What were you doing at that time? Where were you working? How did that impact me? Talk to me about Ian, my godfather. Right. Talk to me about my nan, all these significant people in my life. So it was actually, the keynote was great, but I loved the process of writing a story effectively and then creating a slide deck with pictures and nods to pop culture as well, because I interspersed it with some songs, hits of that time that really brought the story to life. So yeah, it was interesting.
Moment, man. Right? A moment.
A proper moment, yeah. And then when I got to the part about my time in the police, it actually ended up being a small part of
actually the bigger connection
story. Yeah.
So why is connection? What does that mean? What, reliving all of your connections? What's so important about connections, do you think?
I started to see the trajectory of my life and how I'd almost come full circle. So I was born in 82. The Brixton riots happened in 81.
Right.
But it obviously, it wasn't just a moment. That had a ripple effect on communities for years and decades to come. And 30 years later, I was involved in the Brixton riots as a police officer.
Wow.
And I just, at the time, I remember thinking, God, this has happened before. We were here 30 years before. And so when I was in the process of writing my journey in my life, the connections between history and repeating itself just kept coming up.
Right.
You know, why are we not, as a society, learning from the mistakes that have been made previously? It just feels like there's a constant repetition in the things that we see and the things that people do. So that idea of connecting my life to significant moments was empowering, but there was also some, in and amongst all the trauma and the hurt, there was a lot of levity in some of my memories I have of growing up.
Of course.
So it was a real light and shade for me. You know, one minute I was talking about the Brixton riots in 81 and the kind of knock-on effect of that. Then I was segueing into the AIDS and HIV crisis, and then segueing into, you know, a memory of being with my mum and growing up and having a wonderful time on holiday at a caravan park. You know, it was such a mix of things for me, you know. And
do you think, reflecting on your connections, you were able to make more sense of the Emma that we see and hear of today, that's in front of me today?
Yeah, definitely. I think I now, it's like I understand more about myself. You know, I don't think we ever truly get to that place of figuring out who we are and that's it, it's finished. We're always,
I completely hear you.
Do you know what I mean? We're always finding out new things about ourselves, whether it's
redefining as well. So I've certainly been on a journey, you know. I totally really hear this, you know. It's so hard to relive I think it's such a amazing thing to make sense of your life, to look at your life and to see it and go, right, this is how it all makes sense. And when you shared your slide deck with me, I was like, you did that in that it was such an amazing thing to see. I mean, I wasn't there at the event, but I know obviously we spoke about the event. It just feels really profound.
And the bit that I thought was going to get me in the event, the bit that I thought I was going to well up at and choke up at, I didn't. It was a completely different. It was within the first 5 minutes, and there was a picture of my nan, my nanny Della, who passed away in 2014, and we were really close. And I remember just, you know, being on stage, the sage on the stage, you know, in that moment, it was so exposing because it was just me and my slide deck and my story. And suddenly I was overwhelmed with sadness because my nan was on the screen and I saw her face, and I just said, give me a minute. Just give me 2 secs, and composed myself and sort of went into the story. But, you know, it's this idea of authenticity and the rawness of that push and pull that you might experience when you're in a situation like that. You really can't plan for stuff like that.
No, I hear you. And to hear you get emotional makes me emotional, because I cry at anything, as you know. I'm like, oh, like literally,
you did actually.
I'm a little crier. But like, I think I'm a little crier. But I think it was great to hear kind of how that impacted you. Interesting that it wasn't what you thought it was going to be in terms of where you thought it was going to be emotional.
Yeah, I thought I would cry or get upset, not cry, but get upset at a certain point in the story, and it didn't happen. It came before.
Yeah.
And it did throw me off a bit.
Yeah, of course.
I had to sort of, reset. But yeah, it was such a liberating and freeing moment, you know, being able to talk about things not in a self-indulgent way, but in a way that was perhaps reflecting back to somebody else. And afterwards, people came up to me and said, I loved your story. I could really relate to that. Or, you know, I got a real sense of your mum because of the way you described her. And that was my job done.
Yeah, I hear you.
You know?
I hear you.
Yeah.
We've got a book here, haven't we? And it's called My Shit Therapist and Other Mental Health Stories by Michelle Thomas. And you've got a bit in this book, haven't you?
Yes.
And I want you to read it out for us, because I think it brings to life what we've basically just spoken about here in terms of connections. Or I can read it out. I don't know. But I think you should read it.
Okay. I mean, I don't mind.
Do you want me to read it?
I don't mind reading it. Yeah.
There you go.
Because you're right. It kind of forms.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, like, it would be interesting to hear it from somebody else, actually.
All right.
Yeah, you read it. I think it would be nice to
Yeah,
experience the words in a different way.
Right, settle in. I did 8 years in the Metropolitan Police in London. I bloody loved it. I can hear you say this. Sorry, I've got to go back to it. I bloody loved it. Right. I bloody loved it for the first 3 years of my service. You hear my Manchester come out there.
Yeah,
I bloody loved it.
Strong.
For the first 3 years of my service, it was the best job in the world, and I never imagined doing anything else. In August 2011, I was a police officer at the so-called London riots. I was on duty for 23 hours one night. We were ambushed by a group throwing missiles at us after being lured in by a hoax called a reported fight between 6 or 7 people. As we got closer to where the fight was supposed to have been, a sea of about 30 plus people turned the corner, launching anything they had at us. Bottles, sticks, you name it, they had it. And it was all being thrown our way. Never felt fear like it. As I ran back to the base and sat down to gather my breath, my inspector said, "That was lucky, team. We could have had another Keith Blake on our hands." Keith Blakelock was a police officer who was murdered in the Broadwater farm riot in Tottenham in 1985. As he fell, some 30 to 50 people surrounded him and he was found with a 6-inch long knife in his neck, which killed him. My feelings towards the jobs were never quite the same after that night. But when I had a panic attack on duty, I knew it was time to leave, which, although it was the right decision, brought its own set of complications. Being a police officer gave me a sense of status and identity. If I wasn't a police officer anymore, who was I? I certainly wasn't myself for a number of months. I was stressed, drained, and felt the most fragile I had ever felt. 2 years after leaving, I'm the happiest I've ever been. I stopped caring about what people thought of me, and I stopped worrying about how I'd look to others, finally acknowledging that suffering in silence was a bad idea. Now, if I have an anxious day, I know how to manage those feelings, and I have people I can talk to.
So that was written in 2017.
Oh, wow.
So again, it's this idea of going back and reliving. And I read that first at the event that I did the keynote, and that was the hook. So I think the opening line was, nothing could prepare me for that night, not my instincts, not my training, not my uniform. And then I read that story, and the idea was people in the audience thinking, wow, where's she going with this?
Yeah.
You've already got them
in
a few sentences. And then that sort of laid the groundwork for the rest of the journey.
And you met me at the end of that year.
I did, yeah.
So I think you had no idea just how lucky you...
Make it all about you. I knew where that was going. I was like, this is classic work. You met me that year.
How blessed you were. I'm joking. I promise you I'm joking. I'm really not.
You changed my life.
But that was interesting, isn't it? Because, we met at the end of it. And it was when you were in Stonewall.
Yeah, so I left police 2015 and then Stonewall after that. So,
wow.
But again, it comes back to connections. Section 28 happened in 88, 89. That was such a damaging piece of legislation for our community that we're still seeing the effects of today. And there's me in 2017 in Stonewall, the organisation that were instrumental in the repeal of Section 28 in 2003. And growing up as a young person in the 90s, I did feel shame and isolation because of being gay. I wasn't out at that age, but I certainly had thoughts and feelings that I might be, but it was never discussed at school. It was never talked about. I didn't see any positive representation of people that looked like me or were like me. So, to be part of that organisation, it was another moment.
Another moment, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think we're going back? So, repeal of Section 28, we're seeing what's happening right now with the rollback of trans rights. Do you think we're going back?
Going back to talk to me.
There's something more profound here in terms of what you said about we've been here before. You said about the riots.
Yeah.
And I think with LGBT plus rights and gay rights and queer rights, we've been here before as well. Do you feel that?
I do feel that. I being a young person in the 90s, not really being part of the damage that was being done back then in terms of like being at the helm, right? So an example is the Lesbian Avengers. They scaled Parliament to protest against Section 28, and it was huge.
So I know, right.
It's
when
a
you said Lesbian
historical
Avengers, I
moment.
know exactly the group you're talking about. But the first thing, because of the Avengers, that as soon as you said that, you know, the music that came into my
The
head
Avengers.
was like, dun, 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 dun.
But it was literally like that. They scaled down into Parliament as the vote had already been passed, and then they made their point. But you know, I don't think I could have appreciated back then what that meant at the time.
Yeah.
But I think as you get older, you start to experience things and understand things for yourself. And, you know, I do feel like there's a repeat of history right now. It's just affecting a different part of the community. You know, people make these comparisons right now about the trans community being affected in the same way that gay men were, you know, in the late 80s and 90s with the AIDS and HIV crisis. And I think that we are seeing patterns for sure. But I don't think we can sit on our laurels if we're not part of, you know, if we're not, just because you might not be a trans person, it doesn't mean to say that this doesn't affect you. Because there are threats of, you know, same-sex marriage being rolled back in the US. It doesn't feel safe right now. So I am very aware of that.
Yeah. Finally, talk to me about legacy. Why did you choose that word?
Legacy is something I talk about a lot within context of my work. Like what do you want to be remembered for? Like, what do you want your legacy to be? And there's so much polarization right now. There's so much division, as we know. Do you really want to be on the wrong side of history or the right side of history? And legacy for me isn't about what I leave behind and people remembering me specifically. It's about making the lives of others easier than what I had it, or what you had it. You know, it's doing our bit in our own little corners of the world to make a difference. And I always look, you know, we don't get it perfect, and I have made mistakes throughout my life. And my approaches and my practice now within inclusion have changed, and they are different to what they were 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. But I always want to leave a legacy wherever I am. And if someone else picks up the baton to continue the work and to continue the conversations, which I know has happened in a particular organisation I was in, think something started off quite small. I've started these D&I drop-ins. It was an organisation very early on in their journey. And the idea was to create space and hold space for people that didn't really understand what EDI meant there, to come into that space and have a conversation with me. And they could throw anything at me, but within context of the EDI. And I since learned that when I left, the finance manager took that role on to continue those D&I drop-ins through the lens of mental health, but continue the conversations and formalise them and made sure that they were a part of what they do there, a process and a system. And that was just an incredible thing for me to hear, because I thought, this stuff is landing. People are listening. People do want to go to work and have a space that they feel safe in and contribute to something that they know is going to make a change. So for me that was a nice example of, you know, leaving something positive behind.
Perfectly. For the next absolutely, to building, paying it forward almost, right? What 3 or 4 words would describe your legacy?
You're throwing all these questions at me that I hadn't prepped for.
Well, you're good at this, come on.
What 3 or 4 words describe my legacy?
If I was saying to you, Emma, I don't want to think of you dying, bless you, but like you're long gone. Right?
Well, you know, we're all going to go, right?
No, I know, but it's sad, isn't it?
But
like if I was thinking,
it's sad, isn't it? Like it's not going to be sad. It's sad, isn't it? You know, dying. Yeah.
Imagine if you had 3 or 4. If I was to describe you and talk about your legacy after you'd gone,
yeah,
what 3 or 4s would you like? Would you want me to be? What 3 or 4 words would you have in mind for me? What would you want that to be?
Funny.
Well, yeah. She's a funny old bird.
Charmer.
Funny, charmer.
No, I'm joking. What would I want in the context of?
I think funny should be one of them, though.
In the context of me, or just my work and inclusion?
All
encompassing.
That as you see fit.
Okay.
I'm giving a talk to someone about your legacy. What am I saying? What 3 words are coming out for me? I think funny's up there, man. You do the work that you do with a lot of humour, so I would say that I agree with that.
Disarming.
Like that.
I've been to 2 people that have said that to me throughout my career, that the approach I took through a particular work program, they said, you're very disarming.
Yeah.
I think it's getting to the heart of the thing, the root cause, without pushing and pushing and pushing. It's that guide on the side mentality, I think.
Maybe guide on the side.
A guide on the side, yeah. Someone who I've never wanted to take centre stage, even though it's always back to you.
I'm like, really? No, Jake, I don't. But I have, as you know, I have different sides of me as well.
Yeah, which is lovely. That sort of blend of the human being, right? I think a good guide, mentor.
Love that.
How many is that? 3?
Yeah, you've done it there.
Yeah,
you nailed it. Yeah,
a funny guide on the side who mentors people. There you go.
Sorry, I just got this vision of you with like this cloak, with like a little walking stick, with a little walking stick. Don't be really funny. Telling people how
to live their lives the righteous way. Also like maybe calmness, patience.
And that comes through really, a lot with you.
Yeah.
Well, that's been an amazingly profound conversation. Thank you for being such a fan of the show. And
I love your show.
We love having you here. We love having you here. Me and Andres love having you on the show. So thank you for coming along to the show. Thank you for sharing so generously. Every time you come on the show, you always offer a bit more of yourself. And I just think that's such a privilege to hold space for you to do that. So thank you for coming along. Thanks for listening, everyone. That's a wrap.
Thanks for having me, Whoosh.
Pleasure.